guys, what's up? Welcome to episode 9 of What They Play. Before I jump into the interview, I just want to say your support is always appreciated. If you could do me a favor and leave a like and subscribe and leave a comment, let me know what you think, I would appreciate it. But I'm done chatting. I'm going to let you get to it. This is episode 9 of What They Play. What's going on, everybody? This is episode 9 of What They Play. My guest today is formerly from Tested.com, now trying something brand new with FooVR and the Foo Show. I was going to say, actually, the one and only, but that's probably never worked out for you. It's Will Smith. How you doing?
Doing good, CR, man. How about you?
I'm all right. I'm glad we could get you on. For the people who don't know, a little bit of complications back and forth. Apparently, you're a very busy guy, and that's understandable.
Dude, I just never check email. I'm a bad person. So.
It's all good. I'm glad to have you on, though. A little bit about the format of the show. What we like to do here is, first, obviously, introductions, and then get to know you, because I don't want to assume that, everybody that I put the call out to is going to already know who you are. So maybe we can get some more people on to see who you are, what you're about, and where you came from. After that, we have some for fun questions, just because I like to pick people's brains.
Okay.
And then after that, I've outsourced a couple fan questions, most notably from the Giant Bomb community, who absolutely loves you. So,
Look, I've done a lot of really dumb stuff on Giant Bomb videos over the years, so. Where else can you go and light and cook a steak in the palm of your hand than in a Giant Bomb video?
It almost burned down a building in the process. Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
Vinny complains about stuff all the time. It's not. We didn't burn anything down. We were maybe a little bit close, but anyway. That all sounds great.
One mistake.
Yeah. Look. The problem with that. So. There's like 3 people who know what we're talking about and 1 million people who are really confused right now. But
I'm gonna put a little video in the corner.
Yeah. Well, we got an exposure suit, and I had a silver metallic thing. We were trying to cook a steak with a blowtorch in my hand, and I realized I got a pair of welding, because normally firemen have these big, heavy, unwieldy gloves that wouldn't be suitable to hold the steak in. So I just got a pair of really thick leather welding gloves, thinking, oh yeah, this is perfect. What I didn't realize is that I got long arm welding gloves, because that's actually what I like to use that in a shorter shirt when I'm welding. And as I was holding the steak and Norm was blowtorching it with his other hand, I was like, man, my hand is getting really hot. I gotta switch hands. And it kept getting hotter and hotter. And I was like, shit, if this catches on fire, the sleeve went all the way up to my bicep, and there's no way I could have gotten it off from underneath the suit. With it on fire, so I would have relied on Vinny, putting my arm out should I have burst into flames. But it was all fine. Nothing unsafe happened there.
Yeah, perfectly safe.
So I do it every day. It's perfectly.
There's no letters being written to anyone. Emails being sent. It was fine. No one noticed.
Look, they got in less trouble for that than the time that Drew shot the bow and arrow down the hall. So that's all I know.
That, you know what? It's all its own level of dangerous, and I'll put links. I'm going to put links down. Everything that we talk about. If you're interested, I'll put stuff down below. You can go check it out for yourself. Well, moving on from that, I don't think there's ever been a better introduction into the personality that we're talking to. So, real quick, I like to ask this question. It's a consistent thing I do for every interview, because every answer is different. Every person has a story. And it's always something unique and interesting. So, from where you came from to where you are now, it's been a road. You've done a lot of things. But I do want to ask, what initially got you into this line of work, and how did you end up to where you are today?
Okay, so I went to college, and thought I was going to be a doctor. Did a biochemistry degree, did the whole thing, worked in the, and went and worked for a physician one summer. And realized that I didn't want to be a doctor, but I was already 3 years in, and was like, shit, what am I going to do with my life? Yeah, I've got this biochemistry degree now that I don't want to be sucking pipettes for the rest of my life. What am I going to do with this? And I ended up working IT at the University of Tennessee in the biology department for a little while I was figuring that out. And so my job was, if you know anybody who's worked IT in a university, it's one of those things where you have one job on the description and then 35 other jobs, because those are the people in the facilities departments are the ones that kind of get shit done. So while I was there, I worked for a really smart man who had started out as a microscope repair guy. But he taught me a bunch of other stuff. He taught me about, database administration and server administration, building servers, because back then we still built servers. And so in addition to maintaining this imaging lab where they had all sorts of cool printers and scanners and microscopes and stuff like that, I got to go around and learn how to use IRIX machines and Next machines and B boxes and all these things that were like these late 90s. Remember, there was a brief period of time in the late 90s when we thought, oh, it's not just going to be Windows and maybe Mac OS. Maybe there's going to be like 16 other OSs for these specialized things. And all the professors would get grant money, and the computer nerdy ones would be like, shit, yeah, I'm going to use this grant money and buy an SGI box, and I'm going to do some crazy 3D rendering stuff. So, like, I had to learn how to manage SGI boxes. I had to learn how to manage Next boxes. One guy wanted to do video, he thought, and bought a B box, like the old PowerPC, like a BOS 3. So I learned how to do that. And that led me actually to Ars Technica. So Ars Technica started in like summer of '98 as a really tiny, almost like four dudes who just wanted to make a cool tech blog. And before we called them blogs, in fairness, and they were covering OSs. So I wrote in a nasty letter when one of the guys had written something about B. I was like, look, you chuckleheads completely messed this up. Here are the three things that you did wrong, and here's how I would have said this differently so that you didn't sound like a bunch of dumbasses. And the guy who ran the site, Ken Fisher, who's the editor-in-chief still, said, well, you're kind of a jackass, but that was a pretty good letter. Do you want to take over B coverage for us? And I said, yeah, actually, that sounds really fun. I'd love to write about B. And I ended up doing that. I reviewed video cards for them, sound cards, a bunch of PC hardware, and that led me to Maximum PC. And, I ran Maximum PC for a few years and ended up launching Tested in 2010. And, like, the Giant Bomb folks know me from there. But after I did Tested, spent almost 6 years at Tested and launched Foo in the fall of 2015 to figure out some VR stuff.
That's awesome. I know, actually, I'm glad I asked this question because I would have never guessed that was the origin and where, and then there was a Penguin suit in there somewhere, and then
actually there was one at Maximum PC too. Those pictures are on the internet.
It's great. I love that. I don't think when I think of you, I think of just this personality that comes along with all of this really good tech knowledge and really just. I don't know, you seem to be one step ahead of that curve, and it's always good to hear from you and actually learn something new, and that's great. I really think that's awesome, and that kind of leads me to the next question. And the next question is, former guest on the show, Danny O'Dwyer, just recently went out and did his own thing with NoClip, and we talked about the fear of jumping into something new and uncharted, and you're doing a lot of the same with the Foo Show. What are the challenges and how did you feel like comfortable even stepping out, because you were working with Adam and Jamie and Norm, of course, and what was that like, the transition from something that was pretty secure to something that is very untapped?
Well, so man, that's a big question. So okay, first thing I'm going to say is that when you're over 40 and have a kid and a wife that stays home with your kid, there's literally no worse time to go out and start a new company with your own money, and it's like small investment from friends and family, and basically say, okay, well we're gonna live on a fixed income that's a significant fraction of what we were living on before in the most expensive place in North America. So that's not a great. I wouldn't advise anybody to do that. It's not a great idea. But. So one of the things I realized at Tested, when I started Tested, Norm and I wanted to do, we started Tested because because I was looking at Gizmodo and I was looking at Engadget, which were the two big tech sites at the time, and they had gone from being things that were really tools that were really useful for people who want to buy technology stuff to kind of these. They were snarky for the sake of being snarky rather than snarky for the sake of like speaking truth to power. So like they were bitching about the most insignificant things when the people who were reading those blogs would go out and like trying to decipher one of those phone reviews when they were like the edges on this thing are too sharp and they're hurting my fingers when I hold them. When like they were, I guess. My problem was that they were reviewing these phones like people who handle 40 phones a year. And if you're a normal schmo who goes out and buys a phone, you're probably in the United States buying it on a 2-year contract. So that means you're stuck with it for 24 months if it sucks. Yeah. And at the time, most of the phones really sucked, right? Like the iPhone was okay, but kind of sucked. And then the Android phones range from competent, maybe, to burning trash fires. And man, if you got a Galaxy S1 if in the US on a 2-year contract in 2011, you were burned until phones were actually good. Like you had a shitty phone for 2 full years. So I was looking at that stuff. I was like, man, this is serious. Like if you're going to review phones, you need to really treat it seriously. So then, of course, we launched Tested and ended up doing like a bunch of weird as seen on TV jokes. And, Norm masturbated a carrot one time on camera, and I did the first shake weight joke, I think, ever. So, but I mean, yeah, but the point was technology should be fun. And like Tested gave us a place to go and have fun with technology and at the same time provide a useful service, which is always the goal. Like you want to provide a useful service. So fast forward 5 years. We were doing amazing stuff at Tested. Like I stood on top of a nuclear reactor. I sat I looked down between my legs and saw the blue glow. We went to Houston, to Johnson Space Center, and ate the same food that goes up on the International Space Station. I sat inside the trainer where the astronauts all learn how to fly the space shuttle and learn what they do on space shuttle missions, right? Like the real one, not like a prop thing that they set up for tourists or whatever, but like I sat in the commander's seat of it. All the switches flipped. It was amazing. And along that, like that stuff was all incredible, but along the way I realized that I'm not the guy that should be filling buckets. Like that's not what I'm great at. And what I mean by that is I'm really good at figuring out what a site should be or what a product should be, and I'm really good at figuring out how you make how you make the thing that you start with, which is never what you want it to be, into the thing you want it to be. But then once you get to the point that you're pretty happy with what it is and you want to just keep doing that thing over and over again, I'm not great at that. And at the same time I saw the VR stuff and I was like, man, look, I'm old enough that I've seen 3D accelerators happen. I saw Windows happen. I saw 3D accelerators happen. I saw mobile phones happen. I saw sound MP3 players happen. VR to me felt as important, and still does feel as important, a computing interface and a computing platform as phones did. And I wanted to go build something. I've always sat and wrote about shit other people were building and wanted to go build something of my own this time. So here I am. That's
great. So we've got that. You had that motivation to jump to that next thing, the next almost like evolution in the technology thing. But I gotta ask you. Well, first off, let's back up. I'm sorry, I should have said this before, but for those who don't know, can you just describe the Foo Show?
Yeah. So we're building two things with Foo. On the one thing that people see is this thing called the Foo Show, which is a talk show that we record in VR and that you view in VR. And what that means is that instead of watching, say, The Tonight Show on your TV where you see Jimmy Fallon and the Roots and everybody standing there on the stage, with the Foo Show you feel like you're standing in the room with us while we're recording. So instead of being up in the audience or watching through a camera and a TV, you're literally standing right next to me and the people I'm interviewing. Mm-hmm. And then because it's VR, we can take you to impossible places. So in the first episode, we took the creators of Firewatch, a game that came out last year from Campo Santo, and we took Jake and Sean, who are two of the people who made that game, and I interviewed them inside one of the locations from the game. The next episode, which may be out by the time you see this, I should be working on that right now probably. Is oh no, it's all good. Is about a game called Quadrilateral Cowboy, which is the work of Brendan Chung of Blendo Games and some collaborators. And we do the same thing there. But in some of our later episodes this season, we have people who, it's not all about games. We have some people we have a biophysical chemist who's recreated his laboratory in VR so that he can train postdocs and graduate students and stuff like that. And we go in there and then we learn a little bit about his actual work. And as a result of that, he makes nanomachines out of DNA, and normally, they're large molecules, but still infinitesimally small by human scale. Because we're using VR and we can make, everything's just software. We can make them big enough that you can hold them in your hands and you can manipulate them and you can see how they work as if they were real, physical, tangible items. So that's what you guys know about. The real thing that we're building with Foo is is essentially a virtual soundstage. So it's a software infrastructure for recording and distributing performances, like a talk show or a procedural crime show or any number of other things you might be able to think of.
That's there's no limit to what you could be doing. That's incredible.
Well, I mean, there are definitely limits, but
sure.
I mean, our hope is that there's a place for puppeted avatar performance shows, right? I don't know. We'll see.
To put it into perspective, because I always find this fascinating, how big is your team? Because
3 people.
How many?
3.
3 people. That's kind of what I was getting at is people look at these things and a lot of work goes into it, and you can tell a lot of work goes into it, and there's 3 people.
Well, so it's part of the mythology of Silicon Valley, right? Is that 3 guys can go into a garage, 3 people, not just guys, can go into a garage someplace, and like 2 days later, Uber pops out, and all of a sudden it's worth $250 billion.
Right.
That's definitely the case. I mean, it has been the case with mobile apps. It has been the case with like server side stuff like Salesforce and things like that. With VR, it's a little bit different, and we've definitely hit a lot of that. Like everything, we knew it was going to be hard, and we knew it was going to take a long time because we're essentially building a software application inside a game engine. We use Unity, and it's getting better. But for the most part, Unity is designed to load a bunch of art and then run a player through a kind of fixed pipeline of experiences, right? Or to play Uno or something like that. Unity is not designed as a content creation tool where you can record something and then generate a big file that it spits out. So we have to recreate a lot of kind of base Windows functionality in this game engine, which is time consuming. But yeah, like my model on building software sites, whatever, is always figure it out on the cheap with as few people as you can, and then once you have something that works, which is about where we're at now, then figure out how to bring in a bunch of people and polish it up and make a product out of it. So that's where we're at now.
That sounds good. So I want to jump over to some just for fun questions, but sticking with the theme of VR for now. Of course. I kind of wanted to know this because I don't remember you ever talking about it. You probably did. I just maybe missed it. But what was your first VR experience that you ever had?
Oh, so I'm old enough that if I lived in California in the 90s, I would have seen the stuff, the early 90s VR. But the first time I think I put the headset on was probably at GDC. Was it? It must have been GDC the year after Carmack brought that first Oculus prototype to E3. So probably 2013 or 2014. I can't remember, but it was at GDC. They were showing Hawken, and Norman had already tried the headset. At a friend of his had an early dev kit, and I tried it on there, and I was like, "Holy shit! This is like Hawken is not a great game, and it was not a terrific VR experience." Mm-hmm. But I was like, "Oh man, I can look around. I can see okay, this is going to be amazing for games." And then we did a bunch of videos. You saw a lot of people saw the TF2 video. A lot of people saw a lot of stuff that we did at trade shows. But it kind of wasn't until my read on VR at that point was this is going to be really neat for games, and eventually it'll be neat for other stuff. But I kind of don't know where that's like. When you're just using a gamepad and a controller, it's like the most badass monitor in the world, but it's still just a monitor. And then I saw the Vive and Oculus Touch in really short order in 2015 at GDC and E3, and I came out of that first there was an 18-minute loop that Valve was showing press at GDC that year, and it was the Blue, which is the whale thing, and it was Tilt Brush, and it was Google Earth, and it was bow and arrow game, and like 4 or 5 other things, and I came out of that thinking, okay, this is something this is as important as mobile phones are, right? Like this is a hugely important piece of technology, and I was hooked. Like I said, I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. I've seen a bunch of tech demos. I've seen a bunch of press demos, and that Vive loop, and then the Medium, the Oculus Medium, the Oculus Toy Box stuff that they showed at E3, both were easily like top 3 Like it's like that and the GeForce 3 demo, which was unbelievable. And then the first time you saw the iPhone, right? Like there's a handful of things that were just stupendous, like so.
Pinch the zoom.
yeah, like it wasn't even that. It was like, oh, holy shit, that thing has a web browser, right?
Yeah.
And wait, it's not. I've used a Windows Mobile web browser. This looks like there's pictures. It like you can click on links. What devilry is this? So yeah, like that stuff I saw, and I was like, okay, I need to do some research and figure out what I can do here.
Awesome. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
That's it. I'll ramble all day if you give me.
You had mentioned before that the next and most important evolutionary step in VR so far was hands. Having your hands in VR was just like, I mean, you can't even think of it without it now. To you, what do you think the next one is after that? Is it eye tracking, or because to jump too far in advance, it's multi-directional treadmills and suits that no one can afford.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah, no. But
nobody wants that.
Where do you think it's going to take that next step to more immersion?
I think, like, look, I have both of them here. I'm going to grab the Vive just because it's closest. Like, look, this isn't a hand. This is a hand analog, right? This lets you. Okay, so you have that. Yeah, but even here, we'll do both. This is people are going to love this. I hope there's not an audio only version of this. Okay, so like this is the touch controller, and it lets you mimic. They call it hand presence, which is kind of a bullshit term, but the idea is that it lets your physical your physical hands, the ones that are actually attached to your arm, and the digital representation of them in VR kind of line up pretty well with the touch. That doesn't happen with the Vive just because it's abstract. Mm-hmm. We don't really have hands. We have analogs for hands right now. So we have a thing that you can reach out and you can push a button and it'll grab something, or you can squeeze a grip and it'll grab something. When we actually see real hands in VR, that's going to open up a whole different thing. When you can grab and have finger control and stuff like that.
Individual finger movement is that next step, you think? Like for immersion?
No, dude, there are so many next steps. Here's the thing. Having hands was a huge leap, right? That was, and it's not because of having hands necessarily. It's because it opens up a massive number of verbs and interactions. So when I say verbs here, I mean ways to interact with the environment in a game or in a piece of software or something like that. So if you think about playing a game with a gamepad, you press the sticks to move forward, and you have 16 or 18 buttons on there that you can map to different activities. So if one of your activities is press A to swing the sword, then how do you know that you hit another one of the bad guys in the game, right? Mm-hmm. First, it checks your distance from the character, and it looks to see if your cursor, if your reticle is aimed at the person. So if you're aiming in the right direction, you're close enough, and you press A, that sword's going to swing, and they may animate it so it follows different paths, but for all intents and purposes, it's going to follow the same path. And you're going to either hit or not based on whether you're aiming in the right direction, whether you're close enough. If you have a hand and you'd have that same action, swinging a sword, then you can swing the sword down. You can swing it sideways. You can use it to block. You can swing it up from the bottom. You can dodge somebody else's block. And all of a sudden, it's not just that you have more verbs that are available to you. You can pick things up. You can throw them. You can grab them. You can push and pull and yank and do all these other things that you can do with hands that are hard to map to the 16 buttons and 2 sticks and 2 triggers on a gamepad. But also inside each of those verbs, there's the infinite variability of the analog world, and all of a sudden that gets really exciting, like both for game developers and for people who want to make software. So anyway, hands. I think hands. Hand controllers. Look, that'll be a great GIF. I'm just making grabby hands. This is terrific. I can't wait to see what the monsters on the Giant Bomb forums do with this.
Well, they're pretty kind. They're kind.
They are kind. They've been really good to me with a couple of real explicit things that I've had to scrub from the internet.
Okay, this is a very serious question I have for you, and whenever I leave with that, it's not at all.
Oh.
I haven't got much coffee talk from you. I want to know what you're drinking now. Like you actually are directly responsible for me taking better care of how I make coffee.
Oh, good. Well, you're welcome. It's going to get real expensive in the next few years if the climate continues to change in a terrible. So right now, my coffee rig depends on how much coffee my wife's drinking on any given day. So some days she'll drink a full cup or two. Some days she drinks like a little demi-tasse, basically, an espresso cup. If I'm making the full double batch for all of us, then I use a Chemex and the cone. I have one of those shitty Bonavita variable temperature gooseneck kettles to pour, so I can heat the water and pour it with the same kettle. I say it's shitty because it inexplicably leaks about 1 out of every 8 times that I use it. I have no idea why. Everybody complains about it. People have been complaining about that since like 2010 when they announced that thing and launched it. Still does it, but it was $80, so that's kind of expensive, but also it's way cheaper than all the others that are like that. Okay, so I do that for big rounds. If I'm just making for myself, I usually use a Hario V60 with a paper filter, and then occasionally I'll do an AeroPress if I just want like an afternoon pick-me-up. And my grinder is a Baratza Vario, the one with the ceramic burrs, but not the weight dosing because I don't really make espresso at home.
I have I've really started to like, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called the Bulletproof Coffee.
Oh, that stuff. Yeah, people like that.
It's really good. Like, I think, but what really makes it is like I didn't think of the idea of putting like grass-fed cow butter in it. Like that sounded weird at first, but then I did it and wow, it's creamy. It's super creamy. And I don't know. I really enjoy it, but I would have never even attempted to look for something else other than this is a Keurig cup. This is what I'm having today.
Okay, so I got to talk about Keurigs because I don't have a place to talk about this stuff anymore.
Do it.
Don't look, if you want to buy shitty coffee for $50 a pound, just send me a check every month and I'll go to the store and buy some Folgers and I'll jam it in a Ziploc bag for you. I'll send it out. You can send me, I'll give you a deal, $40 a month, because like that's basically what you're paying is $50 a pound for Keurig coffee when you get those pods. If you have a Keurig, like I love the convenience of those machines, right? They're good. They make okay coffee for what they are, but get the reusable pod. Don't fill the fucking landfill with those bad coffee. Anyway, sorry, rant over.
Oh, it's okay. They changed the size. Also, like the size of the reusable ones. When you upgrade to the newer Keurigs, they changed the size of the pods, so you have to go buy new ones because they want you to buy the cups.
Oh yeah. Look, I can't. I have a Soda Stream in my kitchen. Like I know they're evil too, but look. I love sparkling. I love fizzy water. I love just plain fizzy water even. And there's no easier way to make sure I carry a lot less club soda in from the grocery store with that thing. So convenience goes a long way. Yeah.
The Soda Stream is the cheapest way to get as much Red Bull fix as you want. I mean that syrup that they have.
Is it okay? I haven't tried that one.
Oh, it tastes exactly like Red Bull, but it's dangerous.
So like kind of assy, but will jack you up.
You can use a lot and not realize it, and it tastes really good, and then you won't sleep for a week.
Well, yeah, that doesn't seem. I'm such an asshole. I use that and make custom soda sometimes. So like I'll make simple syrup with like strawberry and basil or something like that in the summertime. Make a little strawberry basil soda. Fig and balsamic soda is a big hit in the house. I went to Portland a few months ago and came back with these big jars of this drinking vinegar stuff. It's like a sweet vinegar that you add to club soda or sparkling water, and it makes it's incredible. It's like this really tart, refreshing, carbonated soda beverage that has practically no sugar because it's just vinegar. Anyway,
that sounds great. Actually, just put out a guide to your drinks and we'll
the Will Smith guide to beverages. Okay, I'll get on that.
This is a question. I have a couple stable questions that I like to ask. This one's one that, again, I just like to hear the story behind it. A couple years ago, whenever it came out, me and a couple friends got together, and it's on the channel, but we played through the entirety of Until Dawn together. The way we played it was I played an episode, my friend played an episode, and then my friend played an episode. And it was funny because we were constantly messing each other's decisions up. But because of that, the way we experienced it was so unique. My question to you is, what game in your history that you've played had it doesn't have to be the best game, doesn't have to be the worst game, but what game do you hold a little closer to heart because you experienced it in a way that maybe somebody else just didn't?
Oh man. Okay, so the easy answer here would be to say something like EverQuest, because everybody has their own guild, and their own guild has their own unique drama and challenges. But we had a really good raiding guild for a while in like the Velius days. Mm-hmm. But I might have to go with Crackdown on this one.
Really?
Yeah, like that. I know it's a weird choice, but so that game came out, and I was as sick as I've been in the last 20 years. Probably, I had like 103-degree fever, and it just didn't break. So I was kind of jacked up on cold medicine and feverish, and played that game all like collected all the orbs and the whole thing while I was out with the flu on that, and. Like I've never been able to kind of go back to those games. I mean, I know there's a new one coming out supposedly at some point in the future, but that one's pretty good. Let's see what else. I feel like, I feel like there's probably a better answer for that one. Like I had such a good crew for Halo 2 for such a long time. Like we played Halo 2 well into the Halo 3 days. Mm-hmm. And just played that every night for years and years and years. TF2 is kind of the same way, a little bit of different crowd for that, but and it was on a public server, so it was more other people in and out in addition to the friends, but yeah, probably. Go ahead.
Is there any good arcade memories?
So I grew up in Northeast Tennessee, and at the time. We had one arcade that was in the mall, and I wasn't really allowed. I went there a little bit, but not a whole lot. So I don't have like awesome, the week Mortal Kombat 3 came out because I wasn't in the arcade enough to know that Mortal Kombat 3 was new. Right. I did put my mom in. What was the game with the like test drive or something, race driving maybe, where they had like the gigantic. They had basically like video game Hot Wheels sets with loop-de-loops and stuff like that.
Yeah,
just a sit-down arcade racer with a big screen.
The only racing game I ever went default to was Cruis'n USA, and those. So I don't know which one you're talking about particularly, but they all kind of followed a formula.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Test Drive or Test Drive in here.
That sounds right, but I remember like Test Drive Unlimited and stuff was like consoles, so.
Yeah,
it was probably an arcade. Yeah, there's got to be an arcade game. This is on the fly fact checking.
Yeah, you know what fact checking does to podcasts. Let's see. Yeah, no, it's not gonna. I'm not gonna find this in the time we have. There's nothing people love more than watching. This is an edited
show, so.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay. Good to know. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna look it up.
So we're back.
Yes, we're back. Okay, it's fact check live happened. It's hard driving, is what I was thinking about. So I put my mom in there, and I paid the $1 for her to try it, and I think she got motion sick within like 10 seconds of taking off on the road, getting her into the loop and the wheel and all that stuff. So yeah, I played a lot of NES games. So and back in the day, you had to leave stuff running for days and days because there was no save states. So. I think I probably played Wizards and Warriors, maybe, for the NES. That was like a friend came over for the weekend or something, and we would just play until we couldn't stay awake anymore, and then, fall asleep for 5 hours, and then get up and play some more. And my parents thought that we'd been kidnapped or something because we were just in the room with the Nintendo. In fact, actually, here's your good story. I got it. So we had a sun porch. On the back of the house that wasn't insulated. This was in Northeast Tennessee, up in the mountains, so it gets cold in the wintertime. And my parents didn't want to hear beeps and bloops from the Nintendo, so that was where the NES lived, plugged into a 9-inch, literally a 9-inch GE portable TV is what we called it back then. So in the summertime, it was great because that room was really, really hot, and it was on the west side of the house, so it was really, really sunny, and you couldn't see the screen because of glare. And in the wintertime, it was much, much worse because it wasn't insulated at all, and all I had to keep that room warm was a little bit of space heater and my breath. So it would be, I'd be out there in my full winter coat with like snow pants and boots and I had these gloves that didn't have that had finger cutouts on them, so I could still work my thumbs, but the mittens would be on the fingertips. It was not ideal. It was not really conducive for play.
It was the dedication, though.
But look, through adversity comes greatness, right? So
exactly.
That, my mom still thinks I play Nintendo for a living. So
we took a TV outside at my old friend's house. We actually had to thread it through the window out of his room, and we placed it on this. I don't even know what it was, like a crate of some sort. And we were playing Tekken Tag, and people just started showing up. I don't know how or why. But we had an entire backyard full of people playing Tekken Tag. And then it started to rain, and that didn't stop us because the pull tarp went over the TV, and we got wet, and we kept playing.
Last summer, I took out, I set up, I had to do I was invited to speak at a thing, and they wanted to do demos of games afterwards. So I was going to have to demo the Vive in the outside at night in LA, and I didn't know if it would work. Like, I'd never used it outside before. So I set up all the kit outside in my backyard, and then had the neighbors and everybody come over, and we had just a bunch of people in the backyard playing like VR games.
That's awesome.
In the middle of summer in San Francisco. It was fucking rad.
It did work outside though.
So the caveat is you don't want to have direct sunlight ever go through the lenses onto the screen of your VR headset. Mm-hmm. So you probably don't want to take it out until it's almost dark and the sun's going down. But yeah, it was great because I was standing out in the backyard in the literal pitch black, wearing the headset, and like, you know, I can see. It doesn't bother me because I'm inside the safe space and the headset's lit up. But to anyone else, it just looks like a crazy person is walking around their backyard. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, highly recommend that. You can get light stands from Amazon for about $20 a set of two.
Yeah, I have those exact ones. I think that you're talking about. Yeah. Well, I didn't have any place to also didn't want to drill a hole and like have a hanger or a hang of any sorts. So I just went ahead and went with the stands to begin with. It seems like I can move them too. So you know.
I mean, that goes a long way. I did both. I travel a lot, so I take the kit with me all over the place, which is a whole other nightmare. But anyway,
you have like 32 headsets, so you have to.
I mean, it turns out that the people who give you money to do stuff are like, we would like to see this working before we write a giant check. So
yeah, no, who knew that?
Absolutely not. I think we've had enough fan questions here, sir.
So I'm going to kindly say to the people who wrote these, I'm going to condense some of them because we went on a little tirade on a couple of these, so they're condensed down a little bit.
I've been to Comic-Con. I know how this works.
You mentioned this. You mentioned I think Team Fortress 2 earlier. So let's see. CS316 asks, what about Team Fortress 2 hit you so hard? He goes on to mention that you said you had an absurd hour count in that game. So he just wants you to elaborate why that game. Why did it make you? What was so? I have no word for it. I don't know. I'm literally lost in myself.
What's
right
so compelling about Team Fortress?
Thank you. I'm gonna layer your voice over when I was supposed to say words there.
So compelling. Let's see, man. That's a good question. So part of it is that it hit me at a time when I didn't have a multiplayer game that I was playing. Mm-hmm. So I played. My multiplayer history is Doom and Duke Nukem over modems with friends, point to point, 2-player head to head. A little bit of Dwango and that stuff in the 90s. And then Quake came out, and I didn't really have a network connection to support Quake until Quake World hit. And I played Clan Arena and Team DM on Q1 DM3 for 4 years probably until I got into EverQuest in like 99 or 2000. Played EverQuest real hard, did a lot of like high-end raiding until I got a real job and didn't have time for that anymore. And then I kind of bounced off for a little while until Halo 2 came out, and had a good group of people from work that I played Halo 2 with every night. Then that kind of people started having kids, and Halo 3 came out, and people went off to different games and bounced through a little bit of some other games. But Team Fortress, the thing about Team Fortress that grabbed me, it grabbed me a lot in the same way that at first, because if you play the soldier in Team Fortress, feels a little bit like the Quake 1 guy with the rocket, which was always my. I mean, look, if you're playing Quake 1 and the rocket's not your jam, then you're probably fucking up. But yeah, like there's always, no matter kind of what your mood, there's always a class that feels right in Team Fortress. And then they started, like, the game got really complex and really interesting for a while, and then like the meta of the game got away from the amount of time I was able to spend with it, and things changed a little bit, and I kind of bounced off eventually. But I feel about Overwatch a lot the same way. You know, I told somebody the other day that if you don't like Overwatch, it's just because you haven't found the class that's right for you yet. And it reminds me a lot of Team Fortress in all the good ways from the early days of that. So.
All right, two quick ones, and we'll be at the end of our run here. But I had to ask this one, only because I'm crediting to, and I can't say the whole username, but T Lang, you know who you are. I must have gotten this 15 times, and I think it needs to be answered. Are you still saying executable instead of executable?
I'd probably the same as I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay, no answer.
Look. At this point, it's a perfectly cromulent pronunciation of that word. Thank you very much.
It's funny because I wish I could remember the word, but at work we had another word that came up that had you could have mistaken it twice, and I literally pulled out that part of the podcast to use as an example for this situation, and it wasn't 2 weeks ago that happened.
English, so, motherfucker. Do you speak it?
It comes up in everyday work environments, and it's never going to go away, and the mystery will just have to be a mystery forever.
Look, who knows what I say on any given moment.
Talon says, and this is actually a really good question. I want to end with this one because it I hope it gets there, but it's all about an affordable thing, I think. But do you think there will ever be a time in an affordable way where VR will be a consistent everyday item used in classroom environments?
Yeah. So look, sorry, was there more question?
No, I just it's just, do you think it'll be an everyday use at some point? Do you think that at least, if not, multiple, every classroom at least have a headset or something to say, hey, look at this thing. This is a little bit more immersive to learn the thing that we're talking about.
So, yeah, I mean, that's just the way technology works, right? You start out with something, like I can give you a really long answer to this, or I can give you a short answer.
Your choice.
The short answer is that technology gets cheaper over time, and the reasons that happen is predictable, and there's no reason that the stuff that's in VR headsets won't get cheaper. If you look at the current explosion of hardware, ranging from VR headsets to things like quadcopters and 3D printers and laser cutters and what else? Almost all of the explosion of new products that we're seeing in consumer electronics now spawned from the phone. So if you look at VR headsets exist because phones made screens and accelerators and accelerometers and gyroscopes really, really cheap. Compasses too. You need those too, it turns out. Drones exist because accelerometers and gyroscopes and ARM processors and cameras got really inexpensive. So when you look at all of the little things that are, I do a talk about this actually. There's accelerometers that were solid state. So ones that are silicon-based chip accelerometers in, I think, 2005 cost $1.10 each when you buy them in units of 1,000. So that means if you're Samsung and you want to put an accelerometer in your phone in 2005, it's going to cost you $1.10 per phone, which is a unbelievable amount of money for like an electronics manufacturer. The iPhone came out in 2007 and added an accelerometer. The Android phones came out at the same time and added accelerometers. And all of a sudden, by 2010, 5 years later, those same digital accelerometers cost, I think, 10 cents each. So it was an order of magnitude cost reduction. Today, 7 years after that, if you want to buy accelerometers in units of 1,000, you get them for like 1/10 of a cent each, because there are a billion smartphones made every year, and just the manufacturing, the economies of scale bring the cost on those components that go into all these phones down so low that they cost practically nothing if you want to do them. So if you want to figure out what you can make that will be the future today, look at the stuff that's in phones, look at the stuff that's in these mass market devices that companies are literally making billions of every year, and then figure out what you can do with those parts. Figure out a new way to put those parts together, and you can build a whole new category. If you look at things like drones, they're driving the cost of motors down, of these brushless motors. Yeah. If you look at 3D printers, they're driving the cost of stepper motors. The stepper motors that went into that first 3D printer that Norm and I built on Tested in 2010 cost twice as much, I think. I can't remember what they cost. All I remember is when I looked at stepper motors the other day that are comparable to that, I was like, wow, those are unbelievably cheap. And it's been like 7 years. So it's the VR headsets will get cheaper. People will make standalone headsets that you don't have to jam your phone into, so that you'll be able to, in the same way that you can buy an Xbox that's a dedicated gaming machine for $300 now, you'll be able to buy a VR thing that sits in the VR equivalent of a Chromebook, right? A thing that jams into that you can put on your head and is a standalone device and has some hand controllers and will work in a classroom situation or a business situation or whatever. It's just a matter of getting the screens that we need for those things to work, getting the onboard electronics, getting the performance of the hardware. It'll probably be ARM based, frankly, with real GPUs, and it'll get there. The nice thing about VR that we didn't have with phones is that you could make a really shitty phone and sell it for the same $400 or $500 that you were selling a nice phone for in 2010 or 2011. With VR, that's not as much of an option, because if you make a bad experience in VR, people are going to throw up. And yeah. I think if you buy something and it makes you throw up, you probably can take it back to the store and get your money back. But I could be wrong. So yeah, like the headset sales haven't been great. Haven't been what a lot of people expected. I think they're pretty much right on with what we were planning for. Meaning that the Rift and the Vive sold a fair number of copies, but not more than 1 million.
Are we talking about like 500, 600,000? Is that the number?
I think I want to say that the numbers that I saw that were leaked last from maybe Tim Sweeney were that the Vive sold 500,000 units, okay. The Rift sold somewhere around 200 or 250,000, okay. And then PSVR was another 1 million or 1.25 million. So we're looking at probably 2 million total, but the PlayStation has some weird limitations that they'll figure out eventually, and then the bulk of the market is in Gear VR, which is they gave away a few million handsets with Galaxy S7s and exploding phones last year. So I don't know how many of those are still in use, but they're limited.
Hopefully not. They've crippled those things to not even charge. So. I hope no one has those.
Yeah, yeah, it's so yeah. I don't know. I think that we'll get to a point where this is a thing that if you want to have it, you'll be able to buy it for not a whole lot of money.
I do want to add to that. To another layer to this question is that let's not forget how horribly funded public school systems are. So as cheap as things can get, there's still that hurdle to always have to look to overcome, because some places don't even get books.
Yeah.
It's a horrible reality, but in the dream scenario, once those, like you said, once those moving pieces get so low in price, it becomes way more affordable. I do hope for that. I do hope that people who may not be able to get to a museum could actually take a peek and look at the things that they talk about in a textbook. Mm-hmm. Why not? It sounds great.
Well, and I get my feeling is that the benefits of the technology will be such, maybe not for like elementary school kids, because there's concerns about vision and stuff there, but for high school and college for sure, that it'll become, you wouldn't think of sending a kid to college now without having a computer, like a laptop, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that depending on what kind of course of study they're going to do, you're not going to go to an engineering school if you don't have a headset in 10 years. I would be shocked if that's. I've said some dumb things in the past, so that'll probably come back to bite me. But I don't think that if you're doing science or engineering or things that you're better served by looking at a 3D object rather than a 2D projection of a 3D object. I think that'll be mandatory. So yeah.
All I can say is it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. It really has been. I'm always interested in what you have going on next. You're kind of an innovator and an inventor, and so much more goes into. You can see when you put your your mind and your heart into something, your quality of work actually really, really shows, and it's amazing.
Thanks, CR.
I will absolutely link everything down below. Twitter account, links to everything as far as the Foo Show is concerned. Is there anything you want to add to it at the end here?
Yeah, so the Foo Show is VR native, but we're going to release, maybe up by now, 2D client as well. So if you want, we did a couple interesting things lately. We recorded an episode, a kind of one-off Adult Swim thing a few weeks ago, where we animated Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and he did his football prediction show before the big game, and for that we built this. Basically, it's like a virtual drone camera, so you can fly. Like we set up Carl in the virtual studio, and somebody was wearing a Vive and puppeting him. And then to turn that into a video show, we set up a bunch of video mixers, just like we use at Giant Bomb and tested in all the other places, and piped output from a couple of laptops into that, a couple of computers into that. And I was controlling the cameras for that with just a Xbox controller, like you would fly a Phantom 2 or a 3D robotics drone or something like that. So that client is coming to Steam in beta form for people who buy the show. If you're a Kickstarter backer, you'll just get it. If you're not, you have to do some other stuff. So you don't have to have VR to watch the show, is what I'm saying, I guess. And you can find it on Steam. It'll be on Oculus Home soon. On Steam, we'll do individual episodes. You can just download the episodes you're interested in. On Oculus, you have to buy them all. But yeah, that's what we're working on.
Sounds great. Can't wait to hear more. Obviously, follow on Twitter. And thank you again.
Thanks, CR.
I am honored to have you on the show.
Well, have a good evening. Thank you for having me, man.
It is, what is it? It's almost 2 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning.
Holy hell. Are you in Europe or something? What? Oh, no, I guess not. Yeah, okay. That's hard.
I am in West Virginia, so.
Yeah, very good.
All right,
cheers,
thanks again. Thank you so much for watching this episode of What They Play. I want to send one more thank you out to Will Smith for making the time to come on the show. It really does mean a lot to me. Doing What They Play is something that I've actually really, really, really enjoyed doing. It's my favorite part of the channel. And I don't mind saying that. I love playing the games. I love doing the videos about the games and everything else, but I really love the interaction between people who make games, people who are voices or act in games, and man, it's so awesome to hear their stories and what they've done to get to where they are, and just all the other stories that come with it. It's really awesome, and it's become my favorite part. And I'd like to expand that out further. You know, there's a lot of people who haven't made it past a certain threshold or haven't done something, you know, that's made a huge splash in the community yet, that I would like to get them on the show and maybe help even a little bit elevate what they're doing and discuss what they're doing. So if you are an independent game developer and you're watching this, contact me at makotitan@hotmail.com, or you can look me up on Twitter, and that's Mako_Titan, and we can talk about getting you on the show. I would love to have you. But enough of that. This is the end of the video, and that means there's just one more thing left to say. You know the drill. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, become one of the Titans, and I'll see you guys in the next video.